Welcome to the Times of Israel's Friday Focus. I'm your host, Deputy Editor Amanda Borschel-Dan, here with author, philosopher, public intellectual Micah Goodman, and my friend. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Amanda. I'm glad to be here.
It is such a pleasure. And what we're going to discuss today is something that is a bit of an obsession of mine, actually. And here and there, we're neighbors too. On the paths, I've discussed this with you off mic. But what I want to nail down today is 20 years to the disengagement. So I want to zoom out. I want to take us back to those times. I want to remember the pain and anguish of those times and a bit of joy here and there as well from some of the sides. And then through that, I want to go through and talk about how we got to where we are today. So we're going to have a bit of a journey today, right, Micah?
Yeah. So the disengagement was an idea, powerful idea by Ariel Sharon and his staff. They called it Forum Achava. It was a forum of a few people that used to get together every Friday in the farm of Ariel Sharon in the south. And they cooked this idea. Now, this idea has its own inner logic, the idea of a unilateral withdrawal of Israel from a certain territory, and see what happens. And the biography is that this idea represents the crisis of political ideas regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 2003, 2004, 2005. And this was a crisis. There were two paradigms competing after the Six-Day War. One paradigm was a paradigm of the right, that by settling the land that was conquered in the Six-Day War, by building modern Jewish communities on ancient biblical land, you're connecting our present to our past, that will revitalize the Jewish people. Now, this was an idea that has few versions. It has a secular version, that it connects us to our memory, to our story, it will increase the level of sense of belonging of Israelis to the Jewish people. There was a secular version of that idea that you settle the land and the land returns its fruits to you by being more united and more vibrant and more. And there is the religious version of this, and this is important to understand, is that if you build Jewish communities on biblical land, you're fulfilling an ancient prophecy. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they spoke about that day, that the Jewish people will return to the land of Israel, to Zion, and rebuild. And when you're not fulfilling a commandment. There is the idea that it's a commandment to settle the land. But what's more dramatic is you're fulfilling a prophecy. And the idea is that by activating the prophecy, you're triggering the next prophecies and then the next ones, which means you're paving the way for the coming of the Messiah.
So it sounds like to me that both sides, the secular and the religious, were very connected to the biblical story and the fact that Jews lived in the Gaza Strip, let's call it, for basically the entirety of Jewish history.
So this is all about not just the Gaza Strip. This is about how Israelis reacted to the Six-Day War.
Okay.
Now after this, because what happened in the Gaza Strip has everything to do with us, with Israelis being disenchanted from their own ideologies. But the ideologies began with the secular the right had a religious branch, had a secular branch. The secular branch was about belonging. The religious branch was about believing. The belonging was by connecting to this land. We're connecting to the Jewish people and its heart and its soul and its story. And the religious right was about believing that by doing this, we're fulfilling a prophecy and it will bring the Melech HaMashiach, will bring the Messiah. Okay, these are very powerful ideas. Also, the left had its messianic ideas, post Six-Day War, and which left-wing messianic idea is always utopian. The idea that if we leave this land, hand it over to our neighbors, we'll have peace in our times. That's what's going to happen. And everybody had. Now, what happened? These two grand ideas, utopian ideas of land and peace, people were holding on to them for a while, but then came the First Intifada.
Before we get to the First Intifada, I just want to roll it back slightly. And this idea of land for peace, of course, we have the example of Yamit in the Sinai. And that was one of the more painful pull-outs that the Israelis experienced before the disengagement. So I just want to also have that in our timeline a little bit, to have it in the back of our minds.
That's right. And that's also before the First Intifada, we had this idea that if we could exchange land for peace, and that was considered a very successful peace treaty at the time, and I think it's also history proved that most Israelis today would agree that that was the right move and it was a good decision. We have peace with Egypt, and the idea was, okay, now we have to trade, but Sinai was never really considered biblical land. Menachem Begin, by the way, didn't see Sinai as a part of the historic heart of the Jewish people. Menachem Begin represents the more secular version of the right, not the messianic version. He never saw Sinai. And also many people on the religious right didn't see Sinai as a part of biblical promised land. According to the biblical narrative, we were traveling in Sinai towards the promised land, which means that's not the promised land.
Which means that Gaza is the promised land?
Which means that Gaza is within the perimeters of the promised land, but Sinai no. So, but there was this like experiment in peace and in Camp David and 81 and 82, and it seems like, okay, this is a good idea. So we have these two very powerful ideas that the Six-Day War awakens: the utopia of peace and the utopia of land, and the messianic utopia. And these two big ideas. It's actually a question: how do you leverage the victory? We won the Six-Day War. How do we leverage it? Is it to trade the land for peace and finally be a part of the community of nations? Jews always feel isolated. We feel misunderstood. We feel lonely in history. And that is a sense of exile. And peace with our Arabs will end the exile from humanity. Settling the land will end the exile from our past, from our story. These two ideas of what is exile and how do you end exile. First Intifada comes around. And what happens to many Israelis, I would say almost the entire secular branch of the Israeli right, is the First Intifada cracks or breaks their utopian post-Six-Day War dream. Because when the First Intifada breaks out, this is I think, the fall of 1987. The symbol of the First Intifada is a Palestinian child, 11-year-old, with a rock. On the other side, you see a soldier with a helmet and a gun. That's a very confusing image. Because when we conquered the land in the Six-Day War, we were David. And all these Arab countries were the Goliath. And now when we're holding on to this land, now we're Goliath. And the Palestinian is David. And people are, I remember towards the end of my military, there was like, I wasn't really in the First Intifada, but like towards the end of the First Intifada. And questions were raised. Would you chase 11-year-old kids throwing rocks? Questions were raised, and here's the main question. What are we doing here? What the hell are we doing here? And people doing Miluim, reserves, 30, 40, 50 days surfing in Tulkarem and Kalkilia and policing. And like, hey, we signed up to go to the army to protect our nation, not to control and police a different nation. That's not what we signed up for. And what the secular right went through is a process that Max Weber calls disenchantment. Disenchantment. Like Weber has this idea that before modernity, nature was filled with magic. There were, it was spooky, and there was ghosts and gods, and then science comes and investigates nature rationally, and now there's no more magic. It's a good metaphor. After the Six-Day War, Judea and Samaria was like a biblical land. This is where the Bible, this is David, this is Joseph, this is Abraham, this is Isaac, After the First Intifada, they look at the land and they're saying, there's 2 million Palestinians here. There's no more magic. Meaning maybe our national memories are planted in this land, but there's another nation living in this land. What do we do here? Okay, so the First Intifada was a blow for the Israeli romantic right. Now, if the First Intifada was a blow for the Israeli romantic right, the Second Intifada was a fatal blow for the utopian left. It was a fatal blow. Because if the symbol of the First Intifada was a Palestinian holding a rock, throwing at a soldier with a helmet and a gun, what's a symbol of the Second Intifada that breaks out in 2000?
The bus bombings.
And we kind of forgot, Israel was attacked. We have when buses were exploding all over the place, and shopping malls just around the corner from where we are now, several locations from where we are now. So I was like, over 1,100 Israelis were murdered. We forget that. That's October 7th. I was, spread out. It was scary those days. And how terrorism works, the purpose of terrorism is terror, is to scare people. People didn't come here. There was no tourists. We got married, my wife and I, in 2001. Family from abroad didn't come to the wedding. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I'm just saying that's terrorism, right? And the coffee places in Emek Rafaim around the corner from here, they were all empty. That's terrorism. Now, why was that a fatal blow for the Israeli left? Not only because of how bloody and violent this was, but because of the timing of the Second Intifada.
Right after the Oslo Accords.
Right after Oslo and the conference of Camp David, with Ehud Barak making Yasser, the hospice of Bill Clinton, making Yasser Arafat an offer. Now, there's books written what was in that offer, and what's important is in the Israeli story, Barak offered Arafat everything. And 6 weeks later, buses start exploding. So if you tell an Israeli, like somewhere like in the winter of 2000 or 2001, 2002, you quote the classic left-wing narrative. All this violence is because of the occupation. That narrative broke down because all this violence began after we offered to end the occupation. So if the first Intifada was a disenchantment from the myth of land, the second Intifada was a collective disenchantment from the myth of peace. So where are we now? So the religious branch of the right still believes in sacred land and the messianic vision, but the rest of us, where are we now? No peace, the graduates of two Intifadas were radically confused. From the first Intifada, we learned that we can't control the Palestinians. From the second Intifada, we learned that we can't make peace with the Palestinians. Radically confused.
I just want to add one more thing to this. And I came to the country in 1999, so obviously you have more experience with this. But I hear stories, first-person stories from my husband, for example, that they used to go into Jericho. They used to just pass through Bethlehem. They would
Pre-First Intifada.
Pre-First Intifada. And so the First Intifada not only dispelled the myth of this biblical land is ours and ours alone. It also dispelled the myth for the left that you could actually get along with the people who also lived there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it created a sense it's not accessible to us anymore. We're separate from that. It created. And after this journey of two Intifadas led us to disengagement. And here's why: because there is the inner logic of disengagement is the following. If we don't want to control them, that's what we learned from the first Intifada, and we don't trust them, we can't make peace with them, we learned from the second Intifada, so what are we going to do? So Ariel Sharon says, we're not going to be waiting for anyone. We're going to do what we think is right to do, and we're not going to do it, and we're going to do it unilaterally. So Gaza was considered a withdrawal that doesn't have any real security risks. We'll talk about that later, folks, October 7th. But at the time, a withdrawal from Gaza, it seems like, because topographically, it's not in the hills over Tel Aviv, right? It seems, okay, it's pretty safe. And there's how many? A million?
At that point, I think it was around a million, something
around
like
a
that.
million. So mathematically, it makes sense. We get to make our demographic situation much better without making our geographic situation worse.
Every expert would have told you that Israel's day had passed and Iran was the regnant power in the Middle East. And so far, tiny Israel has succeeded in neutralizing all of the Iranian air defenses, virtually all of them, the security leaders of Iran. One of the key ways we did it is through innovation. And that innovation, as you know, came from the Technion. I was involved intimately with the development and funding of Iron Dome, of David Sling, Arrow 2. None of that would have been possible without Technion. The university has played a pivotal role in saving thousands of lives. Technology is a type of Iron Dome for the society as itself. And it's not just a localized Iron Dome, it's a globalized Iron Dome. We have to invest. As we invest in R&D, we have to invest in the minds behind R&D. Israel has to make itself indispensable to the world. And the only way we're going to do this is through technology. It's Israeli technologies that are not only helping to forge the 21st century, but it also enhances the security of American families, American individuals from now into the future.
Just want to pause again, and we were talking about Ariel Sharon, and for so many years until this December 2003 announcement of the disengagement, he was considered the father of the settler movement.
That's right.
So hearing this from him has so much more reverberations.
That's right. And yet he carried to this transformational moment that, okay, there is a need for some kind of a withdrawal, but he didn't transform what he thinks about Palestinians or about the Middle East. It was the same. That's why it's unilateral. But he says, okay, if we get to choose which land we leave, and there's no deal, so we get to do it unilaterally. So he said, okay, but we need a reward for this, right? Now Gaza saying like that. What I was saying is, okay, we get to get rid of. We're controlling 1 million Palestinians less. That puts us better off demographically. And Gaza is not threatening Tel Aviv topographically. So there's no geographic real price for upgrading our demographic situation. Okay, that was, I think, the calculation. It was like a rational, pragmatic calculation by Sharon and his staff.
And just one more thing, the displacement of the Israelis, we're talking about something like 9,000 Israelis.
9,000? It wasn't that, yeah.
8,800, okay. Something like
Wow.
this in 17-ish settlements. And this is what would be pulled out, meaning it's not the million Gazans that are there surrounding them and needing to be protected. Of course, hundreds of soldiers died, or at least 150.
So it made all that sense, right? And what's interesting, by the way, when we think about this in light of biography of big ideas, big political ideas, is that Sharon did ask for something for return. It wasn't purely unilateral, but he didn't ask something for return from the Palestinians. He said there's nothing to ask from them. That was in Sharon's mind. He asked Condoleezza Rice and George W. Bush, the Americans. And what the Americans gave him is a declaration that I think was approved by both houses of Congress. And the declaration had a few points to it. One, that America recognizes that in a future withdrawal for peace, it won't be to the Green Line. Big achievement. Two, America stands with Israel in rejecting right of return. What I found most interesting in that document was that when it said that if Israel is trying to if there'll be like a international peace initiative trying to be imposed on Israel, America will stand with Israel to reject that. So it's very interesting. What did we get in return for withdrawal from Gaza in Ariel Sharon's eyes? So Ariel Sharon turns everything upside down. We're so used to and rehearsed to the formula of land for peace. Sharon said, I'm willing to give land in order to avoid the whole Narishkeit of peace. It's land to avoid peace. And by the way, people forget, at that time, there were different international initiatives. There was the Geneva Initiative. It seemed like Israel was on the verge of maybe being something internationally imposed on it. And he said, okay, I'll trade land in order to avoid these initiatives, which that captures, that idea, land for not peace, that captures the sentiment of Israelis post both intifadas. From the second intifada, we learned there is no peace. From the first intifada, we don't control the Palestinians. Land, not all the land that we could get rid of without risking our security, and avoiding peace that might be imposed in Israel, and therefore risking Israel, because if it's a withdrawal from the West Bank, that would be putting Israel under real risk. So that was the move. The unilateral move was Ariel Sharon capturing the Israeli sentiment, the confused Israelis that used to think the right was saying land, land. The left was saying peace, peace. What is this engagement? Not land, not peace. Okay, it's sacrificing both dreams, and 70% of Israelis support it.
And one more thing, at the same time, Dov Weisglass, who is extremely important in Sharon's milieu, he said something like, this will put the Palestinian state in formaldehyde. So it's no land or no peace for the Palestinians as well, in a way.
That what he said in that famous interview was that this will give us time. We won't have to make any withdrawal from the West Bank, from Judea and Samaria. This will give us time. And their vision was, like the understanding with Bush, that only when the Palestinians really go through radical transformation, W. Weissglass's, I think, term was when they become like Finland. Yes. Then we could speak out withdrawal. So it wasn't a first step towards more withdrawal. It was a first step in order to avoid more withdrawal. That was the internal logic of Sharon. And what Sharon did, Sharon was a carrier. He managed to capture and to express the sentiment of Israelis that graduated both intifadas. This is 2003, 2004, 2005, right after the second. Like, this is the end of the second intifada, and we're still traumatized from the first intifada, and there is no peace and no land. And like, okay, when you're disenchanted from both ideas, comes Sharon and cashes it in.
And there's also a bit of a model for just cutting the Palestinians off, and that's the separation barrier, right? And by building
that was also Sharon. That's right. It was
Exactly.
also Sharon. It was also Sharon building that very massive separation barrier. But this move that captured a Israeli consensus at the moment had serious ideological implications on the Israeli right. Now, I think the disengagement really transformed the Israeli right. I'll try to explain how this works. I'm talking about the Israeli right that wasn't affected by the First and Second Intifada, the religious Messianic Israeli right. They went through something very interesting and very troubling in doing the disengagement. And it's the following process. In one of the most important figures in the theology of the Israeli Messianic right is Harav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. He is the son of Rav Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Kook. And these are very serious Messianic theologians, especially the Rav Tzvi Yehuda. And the Rav Tzvi Yehuda sees the establishment of the State of Israel as a process, as a major part in the process of redemption. Now, this is how they see it. Establishing the State of Israel is itself a fulfillment of ancient prophecies. Settling biblical land is itself a fulfillment of ancient prophecies. God wants us to do both, to have a vibrant state. And the state itself, its existence and its flourishing, is the will of God. And to settle the land. This engagement, this is what it does. The State of Israel turns its back to the land of Israel. Okay, the State of Israel is giving the army in order to evacuate communities which are living in the biblical land of Israel, which means the Rav Kook spoke about the sacred state and sacred land. But now we're in an impossible, tragic dilemma if you're in that camp. Because if I disobey the order of the government, I'm loyal to the land, but not to the state. And understand that if people don't they don't obey the orders of the government, of the state, there will be no state. There is no state if everybody decides, oh, that's the order, that is not in complete harmony with my ideology, so I'm not going to do it. If everybody does that, there is no state, right? We're in chaos. So it's what the disengagement does. It takes the two parts of the Messianic right, and now they clash each other, and you have to choose: are you for the land or with the state?
What I was going to say is the Yeshivat Rav Kook, I believe at that time, during the disengagement, August 2005, the head rabbi there, Shapira, I think is his name, right? Wow, memory. He went for the land, and that's so interesting.
He went for the land, but the amazing thing is that the majority of religious Zionists, even Messianic religious Zionists, went with the state. That's what's so interesting at that moment, is that they understood that the existence of the State of Israel is a divine miracle. We have to swallow our anger and our pain. And okay, We'll resist it, but we won't break the rules of the game. There was minimum violence. I remember about 2005, I was highly aware politically.
You were 30.
Yeah.
30, yeah,
God, yeah,
right.
I was 30.
I was almost 30, so that means that in a couple months I'll be 35. Again. Anyway.
So I remember following how Haaretz is describing the events that are going to happen in Gush Katif, in Gaza. And they were speaking about violence. That the settlers are going to do the violence, and people are going to die. And there's going to be massive soldiers that will disobey the commandments, and everything will collapse. And I kind of thought that's what's going to happen. It didn't. Because what happened, the balance between the sacred state and the sacred land, the state was more important than the land. But not all ideological right-wingers thought that was the position in the establishment of the settler movement of Moetzet Yesha. That was the position of many rabbis. But there was also an opposition. What happened in the past 20, and people saying that we have to be more aggressive, we have to disobey the law, we have to disobey if you're a soldier, you have to disobey the orders, we have to bring down, if protecting the land means bringing down the state or crippling the state, we have to do that. That was a brutal opposition. What happened in the past 20 years in the Israeli far right, was that the opposition to the mainstream right became the mainstream right. Two figures that were on the opposition back then, and they were considered, one was anonymous and one was weird, Itamar Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. They were against the position of the establishment of the Israeli religious messianic right. They were against it. They said we're for the land, not for the state. Now it seems like now they're leading it, right? So what happened? So I think now what happened was that the religious Zionist community was traumatized by 2005.
So let's just talk about the scenes a little bit. I will never forget it. I was 7 months pregnant with twins who are both soldiers now. One goes in and out of Gaza. Chilling thought. And you saw on the television, or if you were at Gush Katif, you saw just soldiers carrying physically families out, rabbis out, children out, crying.
It was very, very traumatic for that community. It was very traumatic for the entire religious Zionist community.
It was very traumatic for the entire country.
For the entire country, yes. But a narrative was developed, and I think it has truth to it, was that the government didn't really take care of the people that were evacuated from their places in Gaza. You're the reporter. I don't
right. And the facts are that a third of these people until 2016 didn't have permanent housing.
Until 2016.
Yeah.
Okay. And now they started to accumulate a sense of grievance that the entire system is against them. For example, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, they felt, did not protect their rights where they needed it. For example, there's a famous story of I don't know all the stories, but there's stories that surface again and again. Like, for example, that there was a big rally against disengagement. So Sharon ordered the police to stop the buses from going. So they went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, yeah, it's okay. We're with Sharon. Or I think 13, 14-year-old teenage girls were arrested for a long time. You know
I remember this story, right?
Yeah. And the Supreme Court enabled... So there was a sense like when our rights were violated in 2005, the courts weren't with us. And our misery, the Israeli press wasn't covering it. So now...
I mean, I was a journalist then, so I have to say that the Israeli press was definitely covering it. But
but what's important now is the narrative, is the story that they started to live in, and I think it has truth to it. But it doesn't really we gotta understand history. You have to understand the stories that people believe in design who they are and their actions. Now, what happens later on is that the whole deep state mythology, which is an American mythology, makes Aliyah, comes to Israel. The deep state are a bunch of globalist elites that are controlling the bureaucracy, the court system. For religious Zionists, that narrative after this engagement it rang very true. So you see, the seeds of judicial reform, the seeds of getting back at the system that claims that it protects human rights, but not our human rights when they were violated, the seeds for transforming the entire system that's tilted against us was planted in the summer of 2005. And that all those grievances made that shift in the right, which the more anarchic, like the system, the establishment, the state is not important, the land is, that energy that changed all over the world, by the way, right? The establishment is bad, the systems are bad, there's like aggression towards it. So, but that just met the trauma from 2005. So we have here 2005 is a result of two traumas, First Intifada, Second Intifada, and then 2005 creates another trauma, this time for the Messianic branch of the religious Zionists, and that changes them, makes them more militant, and right now, that's the branch that has a lot of power today.
Right, it has a lot of power today, and in fact, in the halls of the Knesset are these conferences about resettling the land that are attended by our finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich,
yeah.
And of course from the Temple Mount, earlier this week even, it was Itamar ben Gvir, who from the Temple Mount also prayed out loud, led prayer, and also called for the resettlement of Gaza.
So Temple Mount was always considered among the establishment of the Messianic branch of religious Zionists. That's not something we have to deal with now. Temple Mount is for the end of the journey of redemption. It's a very fragile place. It's very risky. We don't go halachically. It's not. Some people think you're not supposed to go there halachically. It's not something Temple Mount is where the buttons are that you press them, the Middle East could explode. Right. This is a very so they were saying, and then the people on the margins were saying, no, we have to go to Temple Mount now. What happens that after this engagement, there was a narrative that didn't work anymore. And the narrative was, we need patience, we need to wait. It's gradual, and we have to work together with secular Zionists. That was the classic narrative of religious Zionists for many years. When that broke down, people said, you know what, Temple Mount, we're not waiting. It's not gradual. We're not waiting for the consent of secular Israel. Secular Israel turned against us. So that need we thought after the 6-Day War we have to cooperate with them, that's over. Now, this is not all religious Zionists. This is one branch of religious Zionists. There's other branches that their reaction to the disengagement was, let's stop this, let's engage. Let's connect ourselves to mainstream Israel. Let's connect ourselves. Religious Zionism is a very rich and diverse community. But the most messianic part that was empowered as a result of the trauma of this engagement, they're the ones now in government.
My name is Mel Friedman. I'm a psychologist. Coming along to Bereshit becomes a very interesting and exciting challenge for me in particular. I am pivoting my professional career into resilient aging and healthy aging. I prepare all kinds of things to make our stay, our living, our life here a new beginning. I would like to invite all of you who would like to make a really new beginning and a new life which is good for us all to come and join us at Bereshit.
Let's also discuss a little bit about the betrayal of security, meaning after the 2005 disengagement, Sharon promised that any rocket will be met with, 100 times force. And we never really saw that, which led to, I think, 7-8 wars since 2005 until October 7th, 2023. Don't quote me on that. And the betrayal, essentially, of all the residents and all of Israel.
Yeah. So we kind of thought that when we leave Gaza, Gaza's out of our lives. And like October, like all those rounds of battles in Gaza, on October 7th, it's like, we left Gaza. Gaza didn't leave us. And we're in this immense catastrophe today because of Gaza. So something went wrong. I'll share with you my read. The military establishment told itself a story. And by the way, I bought the story. So if I'm criticizing anyone, it's also myself, okay? And it's the following story. That we could leave territory and still be protected from that territory for the following reason. It's true that when you are present militarily in territory, so it's very easy to build a network of human informers. And that's a very unique source of intelligence. It's not, listening to their, it's not, tapping into their WhatsApps and A200 and cyber and technology. No, you have real people you're talking to. And they help you understand from all the inflation of information coming in through the other channels of intelligence, what's important, what's not important. We had hundreds of informers in Gaza before 2005. But when your military is not there anymore and communities are not there, it's very hard to maintain. When there's no, on Zoom, it's hard to maintain the relationship. And it's dangerous to go in. Throughout the years, we started losing more and more human informers. But we told ourselves a story that even though we don't have many human sources in Gaza, we still know everything that's going on in Gaza. And we didn't. This is what's so terrifying about this story. We were in the dark and we thought we're in the light. We thought we see when we didn't see anything. Because we thought that technology compensates for territory. And for good reasons, we thought technology can solve all our problems. For good reasons. Because we're the startup nation. Because you look at our Air Force, you look at A200, you look at the achievements of the Israeli economy, and you realize Israel has technological superiority. And what is Gaza? It's nothing. And when our enemies believe that we are this technological giant, that's good for us. When we believe in it, that becomes bad for us. And October 7th, like the intelligence failure of October 7th has a lot to do with us relying on technology, giving up on territory. Now, that is, I think, a part of a larger story. Another thing we learned ever since October 7th is that we don't have a large enough army to fight 7 fronts. We don't have enough soldiers. And we don't have enough soldiers because the ultra-Orthodox don't serve. And guess what? The army didn't want them for many years. For many, many years. Because the army was under the paradigm of tzava katan v'chacham. A small and smart and technological army.
A lean, mean fighting machine.
A lean, mean fighting machine. In a world of drones and robots and A200 and Air Force and special units, you don't need a lot of real soldiers, like with helmets and boots. You don't need that. That's so primitive. That's so World War I. We're not there anymore. So, and then we wake up after October 7th like, oh my God, we don't have enough soldiers to fight all these fronts simultaneously. So we have to take the same soldiers and recycle them again and again. And guess what? They can't do it anymore. So thinking that you could give up the size of your army that has everything to do with the myth of technology. So the myth of technology and developing dependence on technology led to withdrawal from Gaza and creating a ptor. How do you say a ptor? The exempt for ultra-Orthodox from serving. Before October 7th, the main argument for Haredim to join the army is about fairness. It's about like abstract idea of equality. No one ever made the argument they need to serve in the army. You know why? Because we need them. That wasn't the argument because no one thought we needed them, because we thought technology solves quantity. So I think this is a part of a larger addiction of the Israeli military and the Israeli thinking to technology. Your greatest advantage always becomes your disadvantage. Your greatest advantage, the fact that you have this advanced technology, becomes a disadvantage once you start being over-dependent on it. Like many things in life, your greatest strength becomes your weakness. And this is what happened to us here. So right now, Israelis are starting. So we avoided Gaza. We thought technology would take care of everything. And then Gaza came and hit us in the face.
And now we're recording the night that a potentially very fateful decision could be made. tonight in the cabinet, the security cabinet, there's meant to be a vote on whether to potentially occupy the entirety of Gaza. There's some reports that say for 4 to 5 months. There's some reports that have an undetermined amount of time. And the question is, 20 years after the disengagement, Israel is going to go back in and occupy, meaning control the people as well of Gaza.
Yeah. We're in a tragic situation because we have only bad options. And the problem is, while we're in tragic dilemmas, we have to choose between bad options, we're always judged as if we're in a binary dilemma. Like we have to choose the good option over the bad option. And we're judged as if we chose bad over good. No, dude, we chose bad over bad, right? That's how Israel is always misunderstood. And we have only bad options, but I personally think that this option of conquering Gaza now, the alternative is bad, but this is catastrophic. It's not that the alternative is so good. Yeah, we have to not dilute, but this might be catastrophic. Because if you just quantify, like what do we have here? Conquering Gaza now is going against world opinion, which turns radically against us, against Israeli public opinion, where the army is filled with fatigue, including our different military vehicles that are need a lot of work done on them. Everything is all eroded. So under these and the fourth problem is our brothers are still there in the ground. So under these conditions, to go to war, the chances of success are low, because if you think about everyone, like the idea that the people of Israel, the majority of them, don't want this war, which means this war will extremely divide Israel. Now, Israel doesn't know how to win wars that the people are not divided behind, are not united behind, like Lebanon won in 1982. That war went wrong when the Israeli public, its majority, turned against the war. Wars that were successful, like the Six-Day War, was a national unity government. Chomat Magen, the operation that brought an end to the Second Intifada in 2002, it was successful also because it was the unity of two titans, Shimon Peres and Ariel Sharon. They got together to crush the Second Intifada. It was a national unity government that did that. The Six-Day War was a national unity government. So Israeli history tells you a story. Israel doesn't know how to win wars that the people are not united. So not only are the people of Israel not united, the world doesn't want this. Our army is filled with fatigue, and we have our hostages. So I think the alternatives are not good. But I really hope our government doesn't choose this option. And if it does, the only way to do something so dramatic, to risk your hostages to defeat Hamas, it's such a dramatic move. It's a mythological move. It's like the binding of Isaac. It's like you're really willing to pay that. So if you want to do that, the only way to do that is having the people of Israel behind it. If it's a decision of the people of Israel, it's a decision that we could, even if it goes wrong, we'll be able to survive it going wrong. But if only a part of Israel think this is the right thing to do, if it goes wrong, if God forbid we risk our brothers and it doesn't lead to the dismantling of Hamas, if this whole thing goes wrong and there's high probability, God knows what's going to happen. We might get lucky. But with the amount of knowledge we have now, we're behind a veil of ignorance. We can't see the future. With the amount of knowledge we have now, there's high probability it's going to go wrong. I'm very afraid for the future of Israel if this goes wrong. The narrative that we risked our brothers and sisters to defeat Hamas, we risked them and Hamas wasn't defeated. If that goes wrong without the people behind this, I'm very afraid of the consequences. So I don't know what the decision is going to be. Many of the listeners, our viewers, already know what the decision of the Israeli government is. But the Ramatkal has a different idea.
The chief of staff.
The chief of staff. And that is the Lebanon model. Which means, like right now, ever since the war with Hezbollah ended, Israel, you probably know the numbers, Israel killed hundreds of Hezbollah terrorists after the war was over. Because what we're doing there, we changed the paradigm. Israel used to attack its enemies when it had information that they are planning to attack us. So you target them before they do that. Now we're attacking them not when they're planning to attack us, but when they're rebuilding their capacity that was destroyed by the IDF. So if we do that in Gaza, right now Hamas is in a position where it's 24 battalions, Gdudas a battalion? 24 battalions their structure is dismantled, their leadership is dead, and they don't have their ability and their missiles, for the most part, 95%, they're probably over. What they have is the tunnels, which means they have defense, not offense. If we do the Lebanon model in Gaza, which means every time we see them trying to build their capacity, their offense capacity, we target them, and hopefully now we will have human resources, because it's something that hopefully I think we've achieved in this war. So I think Israel could be protected from Gaza. Now, is that perfect? No. Will Hamas declare that they won? Yes. Are there bad, negative implications of that? Yes. We have only bad options. We have to choose we don't have the privilege to choose, to have the courage to choose the good option over the bad option. We have only bad options. And I think the Ramatkal's thinking is from all the options, that's probably the option it's the most rational thing for us to go for.
We've gone on so long, but I just want to ask you this because so many people are talking about this option, but the radical difference between the Lebanon Hezbollah option and the Hamas Gaza option is that in Lebanon there is a sovereign nation. Mm-hmm. There's another fighting force that is trying to fill in the vacuum. There's also an international force that's trying to fill in the vacuum. And so the IDF has been working in tandem with these people.
I'll answer you, but I'll let you answer. We don't trust anybody else besides ourselves. And it will be our job to disarm Hamas using targeted strikes, but not through conquering the land. Israel needs to heal now. We need to heal. We're in the middle of a very big war with Iran. People are under the illusion the war with Iran is over.
Over. One and done, right?
That's right. What we did in Iran was two things. We weakened their capabilities, but we strengthened their will to fight us. Right now they're wounded, they're humiliated, so their will, their motivation is higher than before, but their capability is lower. The Persians are very smart and sophisticated people. I think this was the first round. We have to prepare our army for the bigger war. This is it. Our nation has to heal. We need to unite. This is not the time to go to war with the world, to risk our hostages, to divide Israel with the army that needs to recover, and instead it's going to, under this fatigue is not healthy. Our soldiers, God bless them. They've done so much, and they're tired, and when you're tired, you make mistakes, and you're less alert. We're not where we were. This is the time. So I hope that Zamir paradigm, it's not perfect. We have only bad options. I understand the inner logic of people who want to do this. I just think they're not calculating, because the alternative is bad, right? We have only bad options. But I think the right calculation now is to go with the Ramatkal.
Micah, thank you so much for taking all this time to speak with me about this. And there's so much more to discuss. So I really appreciate our talks.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's Friday Focus. Please check out another installment next week. This episode was produced by The Podwaves and video edited by Thomas Gersh. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. This was recorded at Nomi Studios in Jerusalem.